Stop me if you've heard this one before. You are feeling motivated to write. You've cleared your schedule. You've got a beverage, coffee, tea, whatever else. And you sit down, open the DAW, load up Contact or Omnisphere, and suddenly you are completely overwhelmed by the sheer volume of sounds available to you. We're going to talk about the challenges of auditioning patches and auditioning sounds and what I do to help my way through that. And we're also going to look at an intrigue tension cue titled Jury Selection on my week 35 vlog check-in. What is happening, everybody? This is Dave Croft. Welcome to my week 35 vlog check-in, where I am committing to writing at least one cue per week for the entire year. I am calling this 52 cues, and we're going to be looking at this cue. It's called Jury Selection. It was written during my live stream preview this past Friday, and if you missed that, we had a fantastic time writing this cue. I'm going to put a link to that in the one of the pop-ups there that you can check that out. Like, again, really good time was had by all. Before we get started, hey, I want to give a special word of thanks to my Patreon patrons whose support help keep this channel going. We're going to have a lot more about my Patreon at the end of the video. Also, if you haven't, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. It really does help composers just like you find me, and hopefully they find it helpful as well. And if you want to skip over the vlog portions of the video and get straight on to the cue breakdown, you can check out the timestamps in the description below as well. So I got a message or a comment question from one of my YouTube viewers, Michael. He says, a great video, Dave, an awesome cue as always, talking about the how to stop procrastinating and get back to composing video. We'll have a link to that happening. For me, it's wanting to compose and feeling frustrated because now I have to pour through lots and lots of sounds to put into my cue. This is pretty time consuming. This time searching tends to wipe out my desire to compose. Any hints or ideas to help with this? Thanks for the great videos and all the motivation. I got to tell you, this is so common, especially if you have the guitarists call it gear acquisition syndrome. As a drummer collecting cymbals and all that stuff, I totally get it, but it happens to us composers as well. Finding and collecting libraries, the new shiny, everything's always on sale. Subscribe to Spitfire's email blast and get into Waves email and all of these Cinebrass, Cinesamples, Native Instruments. There's always a sale happening, and some of them are killer deals. And so you just kind of collect sounds. And then you go to write and you are just met with an embarrassing number of choices. And so I think it boils down for me. It boils down to two things whenever I'm feeling overwhelmed. And the thing number one is making sure that you know the libraries you have really well. And I don't mean just surface, but really dig into them and know what they want, or know what they offer, rather. I know my Project Sam Symphobia 1 library really well because it was the only legit string library I had for the longest time. And so I dug into that library extensively, finding out what it could and what it couldn't do. And I absolutely leaned on its strengths and avoided its weaknesses. But as you collect sounds over time, then you just kind of vacuum them up and you use them maybe once or twice, but you never, or at least I never find myself digging deeply into many of the sounds and instruments, virtual instruments and libraries that I've bought. I picked up Dronar, which is by the good folks over at Gothic Storms. And the owner of Gothic Storm, Dan Graham, wrote the book that 52 cues is inspired by the idea of writing at least one cue. And I picked up Dronar and it's amazing, but I have yet to really incorporate it because another sale came on and I added the new thing and then I started using that. So the first challenge is know the libraries we have already. Now, if you just have, stock Logic or stock Ableton or the sounds that came with your DAW, then start there. Really, really spend some time. It might mean that you spend an afternoon just auditioning patches and making notes. Maybe take a spreadsheet and say, okay, I'm going to load up Alchemy and just go through every single one of the patches. What I find myself doing, because I haven't done the thing I just suggested for you to do, I've not actually done that myself, and I need to. So I'm talking to myself as much as I'm talking to you. But a lot of times, I kind of like, I want to use Alchemy because it's a synth, and I'll just randomly just poke around and kind of stumble on something and then kind of use it, which can be cool, auditioning sounds and finding cool patches that way. That can be really cool. I did a live stream several weeks ago, and every single one of the sounds was generated randomly from Omnisphere, all but the recorded audio. All of the Omnisphere patches were all generated randomly. And I'll put a link to that. That cue was called a Roulette of Suspicion. And they were all those sounds were chosen at random. But that was more of an exercise. But by limiting myself, it forced me to use the sounds that came up and really extract the most out of it. But I think, and I'm speaking for myself, and I imagine several folks out there, I think we spend too much time gathering sounds rather than really learning the sounds that we have. So I would encourage you, if you're feeling overwhelmed by choice, to spend some time with the libraries you have. Pick one, just one, and go through each and every sound. Spend some time with each and every sound, and make a note, whether it's in a spreadsheet or a notepad file or mentally or however you want to track it. Make a note of what this would be good for and some way that you could get back to it. One of the things I like about Omnisphere is you can kind of, I think Omnisphere does this too, but Alchemy, you can categorize patches with stars. And so I use stars to kind of say, hey, I like this patch. Now I could come up with like a star system. So 5 stars is this, and 3 stars is this, and 2 stars, and have some browse feature that way. But I don't think there's a way in Alchemy to set favorites other than their star rating system. So that was the first thing. Knowing the sounds that you have. I think gathering sounds and buying sounds, I think that's okay, but it's not okay when you go needing for some new kind of, you need some kind of hit to your creativity, and you're trying to solve that by buying sounds as opposed to really exploring the sounds you have. So for me, that was the big one, not really knowing my libraries. The second part of that was in the middle of the composition process, not really having a clear idea what I want, like what I actually want. What sound does this cue really need? That was the second thing. Not being familiar with the library and not really having a clear idea in my mind what the cue needs. And so I would just kind of throw darts in the dark and hope something kind of inspires me, which isn't terrible way to go about writing, especially when you're using a tool like Omnisphere and you get some really good libraries. I've talked all about the unfinished and everything. You get some of those in hand, and those really do some creative inspiring. At least it does for me. It really gets my creativity happening. But ultimately, it might take years, but ultimately I'm going to hit a dead end. That is not necessarily sustainable. I'm relying on the sounds to do some of the creative injection for me, which again isn't inherently bad, but it's just not necessarily sustainable long term. And because of that, you find yourself buying more sounds to kind of get that creative hit so that you could keep the gig happening, keep cranking out cues. But if you start off working on a cue and say, hey, I need this sound. I need this cue needs a synth pulse. This cue needs a pad that has this character. This cue needs this specific string articulation or this brass tone. That then leads me back to point number 1. Knowing your library and know where in the library to find it. Because if you merge both of those together, you know exactly what the cue needs from your creative self and not relying on the plugin to boost your creativity, but your internal muse is dictating what sound you're looking for. And because you've studied your sounds, you know exactly where you're going to go. Now you're cranking out cues much faster because you've spent the time learning the library, you've spent the time honing what you want, and now you're off to the races. And then when you're using new sounds or you're exploring some of the dark corners or the undrawn areas of the map in your libraries that you've not discovered, then that creativity can get buoyed and then goes alongside your creativity that's coming out of you. Does that make sense? Because it's not an either or thing. You don't have to choose, I either know my library or I don't. I either have to have a perfect idea of what I want or I have to hope that the sound inspires me. Those are not binary options. You could do both. Absolutely. Let the sounds inspire you. Have a clear vision for the sounds that you want. Because sometimes you will be in the writing process and you will have no idea what you want. Go to your libraries, start finding some random sounds and see if something sticks. But my point is, that shouldn't be the only way that you find sounds. So know your library, know what it can do, know its strengths, know its weaknesses, so that when you have a clear idea in your creative mind exactly what you want, you know exactly where to go and exactly how to find it. What about you? Do you find the process of auditioning patch after patch after patch to be overwhelming and exhausting? What do you do to work your way around it? I'd love to hear from you. Let me know in the comments below. So let's change gears and check out the cue called Jury Selection. Like I said, this was written during last week's live stream preview. I do live stream every single week as a benefit for my Patreon patrons. However, last week I did a preview for all of YouTube. We had a really, really good time. Tons of fantastic questions. But let's take a listen to Jury Selection and then we will talk about it on the other side. was Jury Selection. I gotta be honest, that title, I'm not crazy about the title. I might change it to Witness Tampering. It goes to a major chord kind of in the middle, and so that's it's intrigue, and so but it might be Witness Tampering. But Jury Selection is the title right now. So that was it. Like I said, written during last week's live stream. And pretty straightforward form-wise. We start off with this low pad. This is an Omnisphere pad. Again, another fantastic unfinished patch. The Unfinished by Matt Bowdler. I need to find out if it's Bowdler or Bowdler. Sprinkle in some low piano. I tell you what, I am just in love with the Noir piano. Everything everybody ever said about the Noir, they were spot on. Absolutely loving it. Now, this is written for a publisher search. They've ordered an album of intrigue cues, and one of the things they really liked was the use of marimba. And so all of the cues on this album have this marimba, very Newman-esque. And this is just stock Logic marimba, split between my low marimba and my high marimba. This is for stemming. Have a low Omnisphere pulse happening underneath it as well. Little percussion pulses. Just little backbeats. So starting that over. Tell you what, I'm gonna go ahead and refreeze these Omnisphere pads. There we go. I do bring a Noir piano line in here, and I was definitely inspired Don Davis's work in The Matrix, specifically the scene where they're under the bridge and it's really raining, and it's like Switch like pulls the gun on him, you can go down that road, blah blah blah, our way or the highway kind of thing. That cue has this motion. It's just an ascending B Dorian scale. Another Omnisphere pulse. And these pulses really respond well to the mod wheel. It's one of the things I like about unfinished patches. Then I bring in some strings. Now these strings are specifically 2 layers happening within them. And I've got them split high and low just for stems. The first is the Albion Neo strings. Which ultimately felt a little thin, and so I layered them with the Symphobia. Now, the Albion Neo library, which is new to me, I recently picked it up on a sale. I need to go back and talk to my Act 1 self. I got it on sale, and the idea is they're Divisi strings, so it's not the entire string section, but it felt a little thin and plasticky. So I layered them with some Symphobia, which are full ensemble, and made sure that the Symphobia mics are the close mics, and you go from this to this. But in context, they cut through just a little bit more So here are all the strings. I did bring some evolved drums, just some backbeats, and eventually they will turn into a full groove, along with the percussion pulses and secondary percussion pulses, which are kind of these metal pitched but not pitched. Little shaker action. Just an egg. That is split left and right. Along with some bowed cymbal, specifically this 22-inch stag cymbal. I put bowed cymbal on nearly everything, on nearly all of my tension tracks. It just sounds absolutely fantastic and gives me really good, moody sounds. And then the other thing that I added are some drum effects using the drum that you're, there it is, that drum right there. It's a big 22-inch frame drum. And using some of these. These are friction mallets, and I can demonstrate them. Right, they just create these really kind of unworldly type of sounds, and they sound kind of like whale songs. Throw some reverb, throw some delay, and use these the drum hits at section points, so that it's transitional material. Coming up into our breakdown. So everything's going to kind of... So I go from this motive in the piano to this motive. Introduce a hong drum or metal drum. This is stock Logic. And this is one of the things that I talked about last week when I talked about my cycle of intrigue, having different rhythmic patterns on top of each other. So a 3-note pattern on top of a 2-note pattern creates some really interesting things. And then bring along with an omnisphere pulse. And my low pulse, which was just every, kind of every now and then, now becomes the primary mover. Kind of sprinkle in a little melodic idea. Now build it by stacking harmonies on top of it. Keep going up the scale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just a little edit point there, and then going to the 4 chord. And back to the 1. So if I've done my job right, all those little rhythmic cycles you really, really don't notice. But that's what's happening here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7. There it is. The end of it's every two measures there. build, 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 have a breakdown, give a nice edit point here before you finally bring everything together. Big push. And we finally have the full drum groove. Again, it's not anything super in your face, but it's just there, just enough to feel some forward rhythmic momentum. So that is jury selection. Probably going to change that to witness tampering. I think that's a better. I think that is a better title for that. So that was my week 35. I got to tell you, I really enjoyed doing that live stream for everybody. I imagine that there will probably be another preview sometime in the future. If that's something you liked watching, if you watched the preview and you want to see more of that, you want to see my process, I do live streams every week as a benefit to my Patreon patrons. To be a patron, it's just $1 and helps keep things going on in the channel. So I want to give a special word of thanks to my patron. And if you're interested in that, check out the Patreon link in the description below. Also, again, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel and giving this video a like. It does help composers just like you find me. So that's going to do it for me today. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a fantastic week 36. Until next time, peace.